For me, I always think, how can I tell the story in the simplest terms? And color is a great vehicle for that. Can you bring up the embedded slide? And I'll show you what I mean. And this is just like you guys were saying, when you're in a situation where you have like, eight lights and a rubber band to make a show, it's you need to make great solid color choices that help tell the story. So this is a production of Embedded, and I lit the entire scene in green because it was a night scene and they're in Iraq fighting a war, so how would we be looking at them? Through night vision, right? It's just kind of telling you where everything is. That was it. And I was lucky enough to have them, kind of stay put and do the thing. And then if you want to switch to the other one, there's a 2 embedded slides, and I'll show you. There you go. So they're driving a Jeep through the desert, and that's it. It's just a simple way to tell the story, to tell time, to tell place. And that's why I use color. Absolutely.
Could you bring up number 14 out of my file? Okay. I even had a further complication. My dark-skinned actors were dressed in black. Okay? But by picking, you look at the man and woman that are white and black up on the platform over there. If you look at the skin tones are good. And the same light works on both skins. It's more an issue of how you balance and blend than it is about anything else.
John, you done?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting that what you just said was you use color to tell the story. Our first note here is it helps to tell the story. You can obviously use it to create, if you're doing a somewhat realistic show, you can use it to create time of day, that kind of stuff, the mood, just kind of help tell the story of where we are, what mood we're in, that kind of thing. And in addition to that, we also like it to help pop out costumes and scenery, which we've kind of discussed. And you can see in the picture that we're about to bring up. Oh, no one down from that. The costumes had a lot of really nice greens and blues in them, and we picked some kind of cyan colors that really helped pop out these costumes and just made it just a little bit more interesting. And that's something too that we tend, when we go with some of our deeper colors and that kind of stuff, we don't always, depending on the situation, we don't always stick completely with reality. We kind of use colors to make a show a little bit larger than life, a little bit more magical than what it really is. And that's not always appropriate, but we feel if someone's going out to a night at the theater or something like that, they really want an experience that is larger than life.
It's an escape.
It is, and that we sometimes can use color to help with that. And as I said, not always appropriate, but.
And in dance, as this picture shows in dance, sometimes you can be you have a little more variety. You don't have to stick to the script. Some choreographers have a great story, and yes, you want to enhance that story, but some, you can be a little bit more, we found that we can be a little bit more creative, a little bit more experimental with our color choices in this. And this one definitely shows the color.
You were talking about passage of time of day. Could you go to mine, and I just want to pop through 21 through 27, which I picked this series, so we'll start with 21. This is a production of Love Labor's Lost. And go to the next slide. So through color, principally, because the front light in this show was no color. So the color was coming from side light, from some high diagonal front, because we were dealing with trying to create this passage of time, and backlight, and then cyc light colors, which don't really show up in some of the slides. And go to the next slide. So we could go into early evening. Next slide. Crack of dawn. Next slide. later in the evening, next slide, and nighttime. And it was all through shifting color around the figures. And if you go on to the next one. And then, of course, at the very end, the whole set went away. So we had to have a completely different system of lighting that we hadn't seen yet in the production for a total of about a minute of the show. But basically, the color palette that we had to work with was about being able to move through those times of day. And by making very deliberate choices about what angle carried what color, I didn't have to have amber all over and blue all over and a warmer reddish all over. So it's about deliberate placement choices, and that comes from thinking through the primary question that we asked when we started this production. And I sat with the director and I said, do you have a preference as to where the sun rises and where it sets? And he did not. So I watched the blocking, and the scene where we've got the earliest morning light, everybody was entering from stage right. Sun rose from stage left, no problem. So that led us then to, okay, is it direct side light or not? And then I realized that I had this backdrop with these translucent clouds in it, and I thought, okay, I want the sun to set in those clouds because it gives me a lot of opportunity to paint and to play with heavily saturated colors that I don't want on the costumes. So then the sunrise was stage left, front of house, so that sunset could be on the cyc. So by making those kinds of deliberate choices, then I had 5 or 6 colors that allowed me to go through that passage of time, and I only had to put each color in about 3 or 4 lights. So I didn't have to do whole systems. So storytelling, understanding what a deliberate choice can do for you, and then using the color to help advance the idea of the story.
Something that years ago when I was studying in college, I saw a Martha Graham dance concert. And the first piece on the program was Acts of Light, which was lit by Gene Rosenthal. And I remember thinking, I get to see the great master design in Acts of Light. I had a preconceived notion that it was going to be based on light. Curtain rises, the dance start, all white light, all white light, all white light for almost 22 minutes, all white light. And in my head, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, well maybe they didn't have Joe back then, and I'm kind of down. I'm just kind of going, Acts of Light is really. And then at the end, the building climax, the entire stage went to red and went out, and I still get shivers thinking about what happened. It was 22 minutes of setting me up with no color. And that red was the most intense red, and in my head, I still have that vision burned into my head. It was the most stunning use of color, or lack of color, that I've ever seen. So it's just one of those. The rest of the pieces went on, but I was just amazed at that one thing of just using that to set it up. So
we actually have an example of a very similar situation that we just did this past fall. If you could pull up Sophia's fall,
No.
Angels in Eden.
Michael, can you guys get closer to the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're not hearing.
So this was a show that much of the show was kind of lit. It looks in this slide. It actually looks like there's a lot of color in this projection. There really isn't that much color in here. It was actually a lot of no color face light and everything, and you can see the no color backlight. And then if you go to the next slide.
The green was just giving us the setting that we were in the Garden of Eden.
And then we go to this one that had a lot of reds and magentas in it. And this scene was so much more powerful because the previous scene had been very little color. So by bringing that contrast in.
It can really change the mood and the dramatic effect. So you don't always have to use everything in every time. And one of the things that Michael and I have found out through the years is just because you have side light on booms, nobody says you have to have the same color symmetry symmetrically all the way up and down the boom. If you don't have scrollers, why not put an amber on this side and a red on this side? And that way you can do the times of day changes. You can have a shift in light. If you have 13 dances and all these different costumes, they're obviously not going to all want the same color, but you can mix it up, and it gives it a lot of dimension and shape as well.
Yes.